My husband liked to say, "Don't forget, without me you're just a foreigner here. One phone call and they'll send you back home without our baby." What he didn't know was that by the time he said that the last time, I had already talked to an immigration lawyer, a women's shelter, and I was done being afraid of him. Before I get into it, if you like long Reddit-style stories about toxic relationships, immigration, control, and legal revenge, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps more people find these full stories. I'm 28. My soon-to-be ex-husband, Eric, is 34. I was born and raised in a small town in Eastern Europe. I didn't grow up rich. My parents worked hard so I could study languages, get a degree, maybe work in tourism one day. I always dreamed about traveling, seeing other countries, building a life somewhere bigger than the place I was born. Eric was that dream for a long time. We met when I was 23. I was working at a hostel in a touristy city during summer, practicing my English on travelers. He was American, here on a long trip. I quit my job to travel for 6 months and find myself type. He was charming in that confident, relaxed way. He made jokes about my accent, but in a playful way, not cruel. He asked me about my country, my family, my dreams. "You're too smart to stay here," he said one night when we were sitting on the hostel roof, sharing cheap beer and looking at the lights. "You should come to the States. You'd crush it there." No one had ever said something like that to me. We started dating. At first it was casual, then serious. He extended his trip. He stayed 3 months instead of 3 weeks. My parents were cautious, but he was polite. He brought flowers. He ate everything my mom cooked even when it was way too heavy for his stomach. He told my dad, "Sir, I really care about your daughter. I'll take care of her." Looking back, I can see the possessive undercurrent in that sentence. At the time, it sounded romantic. After his visa period was almost up, he went back to the U.S. We did long distance for a year. We messaged constantly. He sent me small gifts. I sent him photos of my city, my life, my family. He told me about his job in IT, his apartment, his car, his health insurance, all the things that sounded so stable and shiny compared to my life. "If we get married," he said one night on video call, "we can apply for a spousal visa. You could come here. We could have a real life together, not just screens." I was scared and excited. I loved him. I also wanted out of my small town. It felt like 2 doors opening at once. We did the fiancé visa process. It was long, complicated, expensive. He paid the fees. I filled out forms. I went to medical appointments, interviews at the embassy, background checks. I told myself, he's investing a lot of time and money into this. He must really love me. We got married quickly when I arrived in the U.S., like you have to with that type of visa. My family watched on a glitchy live stream, everyone crying. The first months were a blur. New language, new culture, new food, new everything. I was overwhelmed, homesick, and buzzing with adrenaline. Eric took me to Target and said, "Pick anything for the apartment." I thought I was in a movie. He introduced me to his friends as his European wife, bragged about how brave I was for moving across the world. "You're so independent," he'd say. "Most girls from your country would be too scared to leave." But the independence he praised had a very short leash. The first control came in the form of help. "You don't need to worry about immigration stuff," he said. "It's confusing. I'll handle the paperwork." He kept all the mail in a drawer in his office. If anything came from USCIS, he'd say, "It's just a notice. Nothing urgent. I'll let you know if you need to go somewhere." He filled out forms for my conditional green card, my change of status, everything. I signed where he highlighted. I trusted him. His English was perfect. Mine was still clumsy. "You don't need to read all that legal jargon," he'd say, tapping the pages. It'll just scare you. I've got it. He had it all right. I didn't open a bank account in my name right away. He said, "It's easier to just use mine until you start working," and gave me a card on his account. He set up my phone plan, my health insurance, my everything. "We're a team," he'd say. "You don't have to do the boring stuff alone anymore." It sounded like love. It was also building a cage I didn't see. Work was the second cage. With my visa, I had to wait for work authorization. It took months. I applied for some jobs when the card finally came, but my English and lack of U.S. experience meant I got mostly low-paying offers. He said, "Don't stress about work, babe. My salary is enough. Focus on settling in. You can study, take ESL classes, maybe volunteer. We're not desperate for money." So I did. I took language classes, I cooked, I cleaned, I decorated. I learned how to drive in his city on the wrong side of the road in my brain. I started to make this strange place feel like home. His family liked me. His mom bragged to her church friends about her beautiful foreign daughter-in-law. His sister asked me to teach her kids words in my language. From the outside, it probably looked like a sweet cross-cultural story. Inside, something small in me knew, if this goes wrong, I have nowhere to go. No family here, no friends yet, no savings, no credit history, visa tied to marriage. So I tried very hard to make sure nothing went wrong. We'd been married a little over a year when I found out I was pregnant. I stared at the test in our bathroom, hand over my mouth, body buzzing with fear and joy. A baby, our baby. A tiny half him, half me human who would grow up thinking English was normal and my language was weird. When I told him, he laughed and picked me up, spinning me around carefully. "We did it," he said into my hair. "We're really building a family." The pregnancy was rough. Morning sickness that lasted all day. Homesickness that punched me when my mom sent photos of my niece's birthday. I was tired and nauseous, and lonely in a way I didn't know how to explain in English. He was mostly kind. He went to appointments, squeezed my hand, made jokes, brought home weird food cravings. But little comments started to slip in. "If it wasn't for me, you'd be going through this in some crappy village hospital," he'd say. "Good thing you married me. Think about that when you're mad at me for leaving dishes." I brushed it off as jokes. Americans joke about everything, I told myself. Then one night, when I was about 5 months pregnant, we had our first big fight. I don't even remember what started it. Something small. He stayed out late with friends, didn't answer his phone. I panicked because I couldn't reach him, and it felt like everything here depended on him. When he came home, drunk and laughing, I snapped. "You could have at least texted me," I said, voice shaking. "I was worried. I'm alone here. I don't even know who to call if something happens." He rolled his eyes. "You're so dramatic," he said, tossing his keys. "I was out with Tom, you know him, nothing happened." "You always say I'm dramatic when I'm scared," I said. "I left my whole life to be here. I don't have anyone else." He stared at me for a second, then smirked. "Exactly," he said. "So maybe don't pick stupid fights with the one person keeping you here." The words hit like a slap. "What?" I asked. He shrugged. "I mean, come on," he said. "Without me, you're what? On an expired visa, no job, no money, no family. Immigration doesn't care you're pregnant. They'll just send you home. Do you want to have the baby there?" My chest tightened. "You wouldn't," I whispered. He walked closer. "I'm not saying I would," he said. "I'm saying you should maybe appreciate that I don't. Most guys wouldn't sign all that paperwork, pay all those fees. I did. You owe me some grace." "You owe me." That phrase dug under my skin. I apologized that night. I told myself he'd been drunk, scared, stressed, but the seed was there. He had just said out loud what I'd been afraid of silently, that my entire life here could vanish with one decision from him. After our son was born, everything got sharper. Labor was hard but not traumatic. I had an epidural. He cut the cord. We cried. He took 1,000,000 photos. We named our son Lucas. The first weeks at home were a blur of breastfeeding, sleepless nights, diapers, cluster feeding, tears for no reason. Normal new mom stuff, but everything felt bigger because I was so far from home. My mom couldn't come because of visa issues. His mom came for a week and mostly criticized how I did things differently here than back home. "You people don't swaddle," she asked. "No wonder he cries so much." You people. Eric started working longer hours again. He liked to hold the baby, to post cute photos, to tell people being a dad is wild. But the day-to-day grind was mine. One night at 3 a.m., while I was sobbing over cracked nipples and a screaming baby, I whispered, "I can't do this," to the dark. He heard me. The next day, during an argument about laundry, he threw it back in my face. "You literally said you can't do this," he snapped. "You're lucky I'm here. What would you do without me? Call your mommy in Europe to come change diapers." I looked at him, hair greasy, shirt stained with milk, eyes burning. "That's not fair," I said. I was exhausted. "Welcome to parenthood," he said. "You're not special." The more fragile I felt, the more powerful he acted. He started keeping my passport in his desk for safekeeping. He was the one who opened all mail from USCIS, from the state, from insurance. If I asked questions, he'd sigh. "I told you it's handled," he'd say. "You don't need to stress about grown-up stuff. Just focus on the baby." But I am a grown-up. I wanted to scream. I grew a whole human. Instead, I nodded and rocked Lucas. The immigration threats came back slowly, then all at once. It started when I asked about my next step, removing conditions on my green card. "I think my card expires next year," I said one night. "We need to file those papers right." He didn't look up from his phone. "Yeah, I'll take care of it," he said. "Don't worry about it." "I want to see the forms this time," I said. "I want to know what we're sending." He frowned. "Why?" he asked. "Don't you trust me?" I hesitated. "It's not about trust," I said carefully. "It's my status, my life. I should understand what we're doing." He snorted. "You and your control issues," he said. "You moved here because you said you were tired of dealing with corrupt paperwork. Now you have someone doing it right and you still complain." "I just want to be involved," I said. "I'm not a child." That night he slept on the couch. The next day, when I gently brought it up again, he snapped. "You know what's funny?" he said. "You didn't care about forms when I was paying for everything. Now suddenly you're Miss Independent." "I've always cared," I said quietly. "I was just overwhelmed before." He leaned in, voice low. "Let me remind you of something," he said. "Your right to stay in this country is based on me, on our marriage, on me telling the government, yeah, she's still with me, everything's fine. You want to start acting like we're adversaries. That could get messy." My stomach flipped. "Are you threatening me?" I asked. He shrugged. "I'm stating facts," he said. "USCIS doesn't know you. They know me. They trust my word, not some girl from nowhere who barely speaks English." It wasn't true. My English was much better now, but he said it like a knife. From then on, any time we fought, he'd sprinkle in little reminders. "Careful, don't piss off the sponsor," he'd say, half joking. "Be nice to me, the government likes me more," he'd smirk. If I cried, if I pushed back, he'd say, "You're so emotional. Imagine trying to explain this to an immigration officer. They'll think you're crazy." I started to feel like I was living with my jailer. The breaking point came over something stupid. It was a Saturday. Lucas was almost 2. I'd been talking in a local online moms group, trying to make friends. One of the moms invited me to a park meetup. Lots of international moms, she wrote. We have women from Brazil, India, Ukraine, Mexico. You'll like it. I got excited. I put Lucas in his little shoes, packed snacks, and told Eric. We're going to the park, I said. There's a meetup. He looked up from his game. Who es we? He asked. Me and Lucas, I said. There's a mom's group. I told you about it. You didn't ask me, he said. I didn't think I needed permission to go to a park, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He set down the controller. That's not what I mean, and you know it, he said. You're going to meet strangers from the internet and take my son with you. They're other moms, I said. It's a public park. You don't know who they are, he snapped. You barely know this country. How do you know it's safe? I'll share my location with you, I said. We'll be in daylight with a bunch of kids. I need friends, Eric. I'm lonely. He stood up. We can go together, he said. Not just you. They scheduled it for noon, and you have your gym and your friends. So reschedule, he said, or skip it. It's not a big deal. It was a big deal to me. I'm going, I said, heart pounding. I need this. His face changed. You're forgetting something, he said quietly. You don't make the rules here. You live in my country. That kid is a citizen. You're still conditional. If I tell the right people you're unstable or that this marriage isn't real anymore, you're done. You go home. He stays. The room spun. You can't just tell people and have them steal my child, I said, but my voice shook. He smiled like he'd won. You want to test it? He asked. You think some judge will believe the foreign girl with no family, no job history, no savings, or the American citizen father with a stable job, house, and concerns about his wife's mental health? I'm not mentally ill, I whispered. You cry all the time, he said. You scream, you throw things, you say you hate it here. I have texts. I could show them to anyone and they'd say, yeah, she's not coping. He walked closer. I'm not saying I want to do that, he said. I'm saying you should stop pushing me, because if you leave, I can make things very difficult for you. I didn't go to the park. I shut myself in the bedroom, hugged my son, and stared at the ceiling with my heart pounding. For the first time, instead of thinking, I can't leave because immigration will take my baby, I thought. I have to find out if that's actually true, because if it isn't, he's been holding a fake gun to my head this whole time. The next week, I went to the park anyway. Not for a meetup, just to let Lucas run around and to think. I watched other parents pushing swings, picking up their kids, laughing, chatting in different languages. One mom looked familiar. I'd seen her profile picture in the group. Her name was Anna. She was from Brazil, I remembered. She smiled. You're my name, right? She asked. From the group, you commented about the sleepless nights. I laughed weakly. That's me, I said. We started talking. Within 20 minutes, I was crying on a park bench telling a near stranger about how my husband used my visa to control me. Anna listened, face serious. My ex did the same, she said quietly. With my papers, he liked to say he could deport me like this. She snapped her fingers. He can't, but they say it because they know it scares us. What did you do? I asked. I talked to an immigration lawyer at a women's center, she said. They have free consultations. I didn't leave right away, but I stopped believing his threats. That was the first step. Women's center, I repeated. She nodded. They helped me with information, she said. Depending on your situation, abuse, how long you're married, if you have a citizen kid, There are ways to get status without your husband. You don't have to stay with him to stay here." My heart jumped. "Really?" I asked. "I thought if I leave, I lose everything." She shook her head. "That's what they want you to think," she said. "That's how they keep you stuck." She gave me a card from her wallet. It had the name of a local family and immigration legal aid clinic. "Call them," she said. "Ask questions, just know your options. Even if you don't do anything yet, information is power." That night, while Eric played video games with his headset too loud, I locked myself in the bathroom and called the number on the card. A calm woman's voice answered. I stumbled through my story. Foreign wife, dependent visa, American husband, baby, threats about deportation and custody. She listened, then said, "Okay. There's a lot to unpack here, but I'm going to start with this. Your husband is not the immigration police." She explained that my right to stay in the U.S. was based on more than just him saying so. That there are paths for abused spouses and parents of citizen children to get independent status, especially if there is emotional, financial, or physical abuse. That threatening deportation and using immigration as a weapon is itself a form of abuse that immigration officers are trained to recognize. That family courts don't just hand children to the citizen parent automatically. She didn't promise me magic. She didn't say it would be easy, but she took the weapon out of his hand in my mind. "You are not powerless," she said. "You are scared and isolated. That's different." We booked an in-person appointment for the next week. When I hung up, I felt like I could breathe for the first time in months. At the clinic, I met with two people, an immigration lawyer and a domestic violence advocate. We sat in a small room with a box of tissues and a stack of forms. They asked me detailed questions. How often does he threaten deportation? Has he ever hit you? Does he control your money, documents, phone? Does he isolate you from friends and family? Does he use your immigration status and your child as leverage when you disagree? I answered honestly. He hadn't hit me. He'd punched walls, slammed doors, grabbed my wrist too hard once, but never hit me. Still, they nodded when I described his words. "That's abuse," the advocate said. "Emotional, verbal, immigration-related, it counts." The lawyer drew a little timeline on her notepad. "Okay," she said. "Here's what you need to understand in simple terms. I'm not going to bury you in legal codes. I just want you to know where you stand." She explained that I was illegal. I had a valid conditional green card. Removing conditions did usually involve both spouses, but there were waivers for divorce or abuse. If I left him, I wouldn't instantly lose status or be deported, especially not with a small citizen child and a pending case. He could not just call immigration and have me deported like ordering a pizza. Any attempt by him to falsely accuse me of fraud or instability would be weighed against evidence of his threats and control. Then she said something that made me tear up. "These laws exist partly because of men like your husband," she said. "This is a known pattern. We see it all the time. You are not the first and you are not alone." She gave me a list of things to start doing quietly. Make copies of all immigration documents, IDs, and keep them somewhere he couldn't access. A friend's house, a safe deposit box, even a folder at the clinic. Start a log of his threats, dates, exact words, context. Save texts, emails, any messages where he mentions deportation, custody, sending you back, or using your status against you. Open a bank account in my own name at a different bank and start putting any money I could there, even small amounts. Talk to a family lawyer about custody and separation rights, just to know. "It doesn't mean you have to leave tomorrow," the advocate said, "but if you decide to, you'll be ready." When I left the clinic, I wasn't free, not yet. But I was done believing every word that came out of his mouth like it was law. The next months were strategic. I didn't pick fights. I stopped trying to make him see my side. If he snapped, I went quiet instead of arguing. He noticed. "You're getting better," he said once. "Less dramatic. I think motherhood is finally maturing you." What was really maturing me was realizing I didn't owe him my obedience just because he did some paperwork. Whenever he threatened deportation or custody, I wrote down the conversation afterward with the date and time. I kept a hidden note in my phone under a boring name. I opened a small bank account at a credit union near the clinic. I put in $20 here, $50 there, anytime my parents sent a little money for the baby, or I sold something on Facebook Marketplace. I found my passport and Lucas's birth certificate while cleaning his office and took photos, saved them to a hidden cloud folder the lawyer helped me set up. I went to the mom's group park meetups. When he snarked, "Hanging out with the Immigrant Wives Club again," I smiled and said, "Yes," and then wrote down what he'd said later. I also started going to therapy at the clinic. The therapist helped me untangle the guilt from the facts. "He did help you," she said. "He brought you here. He filed forms. That's real. And he is also using that help like a leash around your neck. Both can be true." "What if I leave and it does go badly?" I asked once. "What if immigration says no? What if the court believes him?" She looked at me. "What if you stay and this is your life until your son is old enough to understand that his father uses fear to control you?" she asked back. "What will that teach him about love?" That question sat in my chest for weeks. The moment I knew I was leaving wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. We were in the kitchen. Lucas was coloring on the floor with washable markers, humming to himself. I said, "I think I want to start an online course. To maybe get a remote job. It would be good to have my own income." He didn't even look up from his phone. "What for?" he asked. "For me," I said. "For my future, for Lucas, to feel like I'm contributing." He snorted. "You contribute fine by taking care of the kid," he said. "You just get stressed and then I'd have to deal with your meltdowns plus work plus parenting. Hard pass." "I can handle it," I said quietly. He set his phone down. "Why are you suddenly obsessed with being independent?" he asked. "Are you planning something? Talking to your little immigrant friends too much?" My heart raced, but my face stayed calm. "I'm just planning for the future," I said. "For all of us." He leaned in, eyes narrow. "Don't forget," he said softly, "I am your future. You don't have one here without me. If you push this, if you start causing trouble, I can make a call. You go home. He stays. End of story." Lucas looked up at us, big eyes confused, marker in hand. Something in me snapped. Not loud, not explosive, just done. In that moment I didn't think, what if he's right? I thought very clearly, I never want my son to grow up thinking this is how love talks. The next day, while Eric was at work, I called both lawyers, immigration and family. "I'm ready," I said. "What do we do first?" The plan was careful. The family lawyer explained custody basics, that the court looks at the best interests of the child, not passport power, that my role as primary caregiver mattered, that his threats and controlling behavior would absolutely be relevant. The immigration lawyer started drafting a petition to remove conditions based on divorce and abuse. She collected my evidence, logs of threats, saved texts, notes from my therapist and the DV advocate describing the pattern. They coordinated so we wouldn't accidentally sabotage one case with the other. The advocate helped me make a safety plan. Keep a small bag packed for me and Lucas at a friend's house. Memorize important phone numbers in case he took my phone. Agree with Anna on a code word. I could text if I needed help quickly. Wait to serve him divorce papers until I had a safe place to go. When everything was ready, we picked a date. Anna picked us up that morning while Eric was at work, our bags already in her trunk. We drove to a small furnished apartment rented by the DV organization, a temporary safe place for women with kids. I strapped Lucas into a borrowed crib, kissed his forehead, and finally let myself cry. Later that afternoon, the process server delivered the divorce and custody papers to Eric at his office. My phone lit up with his name over and over. I didn't answer. Instead, my family lawyer called him and said, "My client will communicate through counsel from now on." He exploded via email instead. "You ungrateful bitch, I brought you here, I gave you everything, and you repay me by trying to steal my son. You think you can just stay here without me? I'll make sure immigration knows you used me for papers. I'll tell them the marriage was fake. You're mentally unstable. I have recordings of you crying, screaming, saying you hate this country. I'll show a judge. You'll be on a plane and I'll have full custody." We printed every message. The immigration lawyer smiled grimly. "Thank you, sir, for writing our exhibit list for us," she said. In the custody hearing, he played his part perfectly at first. Calm, concerned, the reasonable one. He told the judge in a sad voice that I was overwhelmed, struggling with culture shock, ungrateful, and easily manipulated by other immigrant women who just want her to leave her hero husband. Yes, he actually said hero husband. He said he was terrified I'd take Lucas and disappear back to my country, that he'd always tried to help with her papers, and that he was just being honest about my mental state. My lawyer let him talk. Then she asked the judge's permission to submit a packet of exhibits. Inside were screenshots of his messages threatening to call immigration and have me deported without our son. Photos of my bruised wrist from the one time he'd grabbed me, with timestamps and my therapist's note. Statements from the DV advocate about his pattern of control and immigration-related threats. A letter from the immigration lawyer explaining that he had been withholding information and that I was independently pursuing my status. Logs of his statements like, "You don't have a future here without me, and I can make a call and you're done." When he saw the printouts, his face went red. "She's twisting everything," he shouted. "Those were just fights, just words. I'd never actually do it." The judge looked at him over his glasses. "Words matter, Mr. Last Name," he said, "especially when they're repeated and used to control someone's sense of safety. Threatening to use someone's immigration status against them is a very serious form of coercion." My lawyer asked me gentle questions. I told the court in my now strong English how I'd moved for love, how I'd trusted him with my future, how he'd slowly turned that trust into a weapon. I didn't cry, my voice shook, but I stayed standing. When the judge made preliminary orders, he didn't give either of us full custody yet. These things take time. But he granted joint legal custody, with me as the primary residential parent for now, since I had been the primary caregiver. A specific parenting schedule for Eric, not whenever he feels like it. An order that neither of us could take Lucas out of the country without written permission from the other or the court. He also made a note on the record that immigration threats had been used and that the court took that seriously. Eric glared at me in the hallway afterward. "You think you won," he hissed. "You're still on my country's soil. Don't forget where you are." I looked at my lawyer, my advocate, Lucas holding my hand. "Yeah," I said quietly, "I think I finally remember where I am. As I record this story now, here's where things stand. I live in a small but cozy apartment with Lucas. The DV organization helped me with the deposit. Anna and the moms group donated furniture, toys, dishes. I'm working on an online certificate program. It's not a full degree, but it's a start. I even do some freelance translation work for a tiny bit of income. My immigration case is pending. It's slow, it's stressful, but it's mine. The lawyers say my evidence is strong. Eric sees Lucas according to the court schedule. Sometimes he's sweet, sometimes he's bitter. But he doesn't get to control my mail, my passport, or my sense of worth anymore. Am I still scared sometimes? Yes. I wake up at 3 a.m. some nights and think, what if it all falls apart? Then I hear Lucas snoring in his little bed. I see his messy drawings on my fridge. I remember the clinic, the judge saying words like serious and coercion, and I know. Even if it gets harder, I am no longer living in a cage someone else told me was love. My husband loved to say, without me, you're nothing here. He was wrong. Without him, I am a tired, stubborn, terrified, hopeful immigrant mom, building a life one small decision at a time. And that's not nothing. That's everything. So what do you think? If you moved to another country for love and your partner started using your visa and your baby as a weapon, saying they could have you deported and keep your child if you ever disobeyed, would you stay and hope they calmed down? Or would you, like me, start quietly collecting documents, finding allies, and taking your future back from the person who was supposed to protect it? Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video, tell us whose side you're on in the comments, and subscribe to Reddit Story Vault for more full Reddit-style stories about relationships, immigration, family drama, and legal revenge every day.